Okay, we're going to have a little bit of fun with overlay today and trying a number of different functions. The first thing we'll do is overlay one clip over itself and set the timing off a little bit so that you'll find one character moving in different parts of the video. So I'm going to take here a clip from the very fine film called Vertigo. Don't mind the sound, it's not very good in here. So that's the clip. And we're just going to put it on the timeline here. Take this and we need to stretch it out because we really need to work on it. And I want to unlink them because I only want one soundtrack. Okay, so what we need to do is take this clip and make a copy of it. So I'll go to the end of there, I'll do Command C and then Command V. And I'll lay it on top of here. And we'll go into Effect Controls. And what we want to do is work with opacity here. And we're going to try several different blend modes. Now the first thing we'll do is we can go with Darken. Now we go with Darken, but nothing changes because they're overlaid exactly. However, if we move in here and offset them by a certain degree, maybe about that much, you're going to see two characters. And because I use the darken function right here, you see the characters quite clearly because they themselves are quite dark. But here and there they will disappear just because the background might be darker than they are. There you go. Now, what we're going to have here, of course, is just some of the clip only has one, and then another one suddenly appears. So I think we can fill up these two gaps here. We'll maybe separate them a little bit more. We'll see. Now, if you actually did it with Lighten, they practically disappear because it takes the lightest of the two values, and they're quite dark. So you'll see them kind of appear here and there, like up here and there, wherever the background is a little bit darker, and they appear. But we're going to go back here to Darken. And I'm going to take this clip and I'm going to copy and paste it a couple of times. And I'll move each one in line here. So I'm going to take this tool here which stretches or shrinks the rate of time. So if we shrink this, it actually speeds it up. So I'm going to take this and shrink it right to there. That'll speed it up. And this one, and I'm going to make this one go backwards. So there we go. Now we don't want it going entirely without sound here. So I'm going to take the sound, copy it, that's Command C, move to the end of there, Command V, and then I am going to reverse this. Again, that's Command R. And once again, shrink the time. So there we go. We have a soundtrack for all of it. This one you won't hear much because the pitch is so high. Okay, now what we could do is take this entire chunk, copy it, and paste it. And what we'll do with these is we're just simply going to use a different blend mode. So we'll do these as lighten. And I'm going to paste it again. And I'm going to take one of these. They're both darken. And I'm going to pop this one on top. And again, I'll use my stretch tool to stretch this one out. So this will go a little bit slower. And then here, that's also darken. And you're going to see, and just make sure they're all darken. That's darken. And you're going to see multiple figures move through there. And we could again take this entire chunk and repeat it again. Copy, paste, and just do this one as lighten, and you'll see they'll get a very different effect. Now, one thing I would like to do is I would like to create one other. And take out one layer because we don't really need that one. And I'm going to go up here with opacity and play a little bit with it. And you'll see one of the characters fade in and out. So we'll put a keyframe there. We'll move it down a little bit, and we'll put the opacity to 0. Move it ahead a bit. Move it up. This is just somewhat arbitrary. And you'll see one of the characters just moves in and out of existence. Now, one thing you'll notice is up here, there's a little flag that comes up, and you'd probably want to cover that up. So that's not too difficult of a move here. So what we need to do is take one chunk of the video and copy it, paste it, and then we have to cut it off just where the flag starts to appear. Take your razor blade, cut it there. And now we need to crop it so it's just one little piece. So you go into crop, highlight it, go into crop, and we'll crop left off. And the bottom. So essentially you can't see it, but we have a little piece in there. And then we pop it on top. And you take the stretch tool and you just drag it across. So that's a much more functional reason for using the overlay. And then you take this whole thing and you export it. So I'll press I for in and O for out. Then you go up to File, Export, Media. Then you give it a new name and you export it. I've already exported it. Next up is to use green screen to insert two characters into this beautiful beach scene, but the additional thing I'll be showing you is how to actually make a shadow. So we have this beautiful beach scene out in Nova Scotia. Stretch this all out a little bit. And we're going to take these two very annoying characters and insert them into that beach. So we'll first work with this guitar playing astronaut. And I think I'll just mute it for now, so you can't really hear them. There we go. So what I need to do is I need to insert it on top of here, and then I have to shrink it so it fits and move it into place. So you need to highlight it and go into Effect Controls. And the first thing to do is just simply shrink it. So we go into Motion, and you can either shrink it by clicking on this or just simply changing the scale. I think that's about perhaps the size we would like. And we're going to need to crop it to get rid of the black bands here so that we can color key this. And then we might want to move it slightly. We can either, again, click on this and just move it into place. Oh, perhaps maybe there. That's kind of a good dance spot. Maybe make it a tiny bit bigger. There we go. So the first thing we do on here is to crop it. So we go into Effects, into Transform, and do the crop. So it'll just be the top and the bottom. There we go. And the rest of it we can just simply green screen out. We'll close these up a little bit for now. And then we go down to keying. And because this is such a bright, consistent green, we don't really need to use color key as much as we could just use the Ultra key. You click on that, you just simply take the eyedropper and you click the green and it's gone. So then we just have this astronaut dancing on there. However, he doesn't have a shadow, so we have to create a shadow. So we just take that clip. We can unlink them here because we just need one. We take that clip, we copy it, and just paste it right there. And we lay it over top. And won't really see them because they are overlaid exactly. But what we need to do is turn this one into a shadow. Don't need the Ultra key anymore. So we just click on this. And you go into motion and you can do rotation. Probably want to rotate it this way because the shadow is going to come out over here. So you've got the rotation there, and really what you need to do is actually put the dancing one on top and the shadow on the bottom. It's not major, but you want to make sure that the feet are over top of the shadow. And then you have to move the shadow into place. So you can do it just by manipulating these numbers here, or again, you can just click on this and just move it into place. Doesn't quite look like a shadow just yet. So you've got to do a few things with that. So you go into Distort. And you go down to Transform. And you double click on that. And this comes up. And there's this little tab here that says Uniform Scale. You want to get rid of that. So you can play with both the width and the height. And the width we want to change. We want to make it much narrower. And we probably want to stretch it out a little bit. But if we stretch it out, you see that we still have to move it again. Kind of out to here. Okay, so now we have what looks like a shadow to a degree. So what we do first is we go into Image Control and to Color Replace. So we get our target color, which would probably be something like the helmet. And then for this color, we want it to be somewhat of a... For this color, we want it to be kind of sand colored. However, a little bit darker. So I'll put it right about there. And then we need to beef up this similarity so it becomes solid black. Now it's starting to look a fair bit like a shadow. But there's a couple things that we need to do. We need to go into color balance and saturation. And essentially you want to desaturate it. That way no color will pop up, so it's just kind of a little bit more of a dark overlay than a specific color. And then you need to go up to opacity and bump the opacity down so that you see some of the background coming in. That's not too bad of a shadow. Last little bit of touch up is just to blur this slightly. So you go down here to blur and sharpen, go to Gaussian blur, and you can just blur it to a certain degree. There we go. We have a pretty decent shadow. So I've done the same thing with the dancer here. But I've got to do just a couple of things to change it. So the first one, I'll go back to transform again, and I want a horizontal flip, which actually, because I've already turned this 90 degrees, it'll make it flip vertically, and that way that the feet sort of mirror each other rather than simply knocking it over. So I do a horizontal flip there, and you'll see that it just matches a little bit better. Although if you really want to split hairs here, it doesn't quite match it. The other thing I want to do is actually make it move across the screen, so he's not just dancing in one spot. And this is a little bit tricky because of the fact of how we've moved this. We have to do it more or less by hand with a lot of adjustments. So we'll first move the character himself. And we'll start right at the beginning here. Take that character. And in this case, it's better really just to use the horizontal number movement rather than actually clicking on here and just moving it about. So we'll take this character again, and we're just going to move it backwards to there. And then we'll take the shadow and also move it. So we're kind of guesstimating where the shadow would come in. And we will make sure to put a keyframe there. That's very important to do. And then we will move it across here. You'll just see him dancing around. And then we just move them both across. So we'll do first the character. Right out of there, and then the shadow. And I'm changing these numbers simply by clicking on it and dragging across. Next up, we're going to look at types of overlay using either the green screen or material with black background and using the lighten function in the blend mode. So we're going to take one of our favorite old clips here. We've looked at this a number of times. And it's got to have a little bit of atmosphere, perhaps some smoke or something. So first thing we can do is take these are the smokes with the black background, and here we have green screen with dust and things like that. And there's some snowflakes. So first of all, I'm going to take the green and black dust, and I'm going to just drop it right on top, and wow, it just fits. And once again, we go into the color key. We take our eyedropper and put it on there and go down to color tolerance and increase the tolerance. And you'll see essentially you get a really kind of blocky sort of green coming out of there. And one of the ways of deciding whether or not to use a green screen or the black background with the darken function is considering how sort of crisp and solid and sharp-edged your material is, and or how wispy it is. And generally, the more crisp and sharp-edged, green screen works better. You can always soften the edges a little bit. And even with this one, you can use a little bit of edge feather and things like that. And you can increase your tolerance. But it doesn't work all that well with this. Now, there is, of course, one key up our sleeve here, and that's using the Ultra key, which in this particular case works quite well. One of the problems of Ultra key is that it can erase a little bit too much and leave a transparency. In this case, the transparency works quite well. So that's one option, but that only works if you have a very, very clean and consistent green background. Otherwise, it's going to leave splotches and things like that in there. We'll take, let's say, our snowfall here. Stretch it out somewhat. Into opacity. And use the lighten function. There you go. Now we could take our smoke and do the same thing. Now I've already put it on lighten, so each one of these will work fairly well. And that really is the simplest way to do this.
Time is an abyss. I don't attach importance to sunshine anymore, or to glittering fountains, which youth is so fond of. I love the darkness and the shadows, where I can be alone with my thoughts. I am the descendant of an old family. Time is an abyss, profound as 1,000 nights.